Welcome to Sports Guy Talking. I am Dustin Tran, your host, as I am joined by guest Shawn Davisson today to give our biggest takeaways for the 2023 NFL Draft. There were certainly lots of surprises throughout draft night. Some teams were way more active than others. Before I say anything else though, I want to present you guys with a topic question. So here it is. What are your three biggest takeaways from the 2023 NFL Draft?
Yeah, I picked out three winners, three losers. I would like to probably steal a winner that you might take because I know we talked about it and you had very high opinions on this draft. But I'm going to go with the Seattle Seahawks. I'm going to use this as a takeaway. They used the 5th overall pick, get Devon Witherspoon. Like him a lot, the cornerback from Illinois. I think he'll be a good guy out on the edge, kind of what they needed. That's probably about a solid pick I'd give him. The pick that pushed it over the edge was getting Jackson Smith-Njigba at pick 20. That's the guy they needed for Geno Smith. If you're going to pay Geno Smith all this money, you're going to need to get him some more weapons and stuff. Obviously, he has some solid guys there, but you want that pure slot option, or even he can play outside. That's what I like about him. He's super versatile, but Njigba can play in the slot, and I think that's probably where they would put him. And I think he's going to be the best wide receiver in this draft. And, you know, especially he was the first wide receiver picked, but there was 4 straight in a row. So I think a lot of teams have differing opinions. I think when this draft is all said and done, he'll be the best receiver.
Yeah, I really like the Seattle Seahawks draft decisions as well. I like that Witherspoon guy. He's going to be a good outside corner. The Seahawks are trying to rebuild that LOB that they once had for them. And I love their pick with the 20th pick in Jackson Smith-Njigba. He's going to be such a good player for Seattle. And now they're 3 deep at wide receiver. But as far as what are my 3 biggest takeaways, well, I want to shout out the Houston Texans because they dominated the headlines for good reasons. When's the last time you could have said that about the Houston Texans? The Houston Texans get the best quarterback on the board and they get the best defensive player on the board at the same time. Who would have thought that? I don't think anybody had that on their bingo card. For them to be able to get CJ Stroud and Will Anderson, congrats to the Houston Texans. They did a good job with that. Yeah, they gave up a lot to get Will Anderson, but it's certainly worth it because Will Anderson is a generational type of defensive player. He's going to be really good for the Houston Texans. He's going to make them relevant. CJ Stroud, he's also going to make the Houston Texans competitive. He could possibly serve as Joe Burrow of the South. That's how good I think CJ Stroud can be. So that's one of my takeaways that involves the Houston Texans. The other takeaway that I'm going to say is that the Detroit Lions, they reached on both of their first round picks. They had 2 first round picks entering this draft and they did not make good use of it. One, they traded down to it, which honestly was not a great trade looking back at it, and it's who they picked at pick 12. You pick Gibbs, even though you already have DeAndre Swift, even though they just signed David Montgomery. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Do I think Gibbs is a good running back? Absolutely. When you look at this guy, he reminds me of Jamal Charles. But I don't think the Detroit Lions should have picked him with the 12th overall pick. Then for pick 18, they picked a linebacker named Jack Campbell, who some people probably didn't even have a first-round grade. So I'm not a big fan of either of those selections for the Detroit Lions. And the third takeaway that I want to give is to the Philadelphia Eagles because they just found a way to recreate the Georgia defensive line with both of their picks. For them to get Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, that is pretty incredible what they pulled off. And the Hargrave loss that they suffered in free agency, that void has now been filled, and the Eagles defensive line is looking very, very strong. I know that Jalen Carter's got character concerns, but in that veteran locker room in Philly, I don't think that's going to be much of an issue. Then I want to give an honorable mention. How about Will Levis dropping out of the first round entirely? I mean, we thought that would be a possibility, but not a lot of people did. We talked about Will Levis, and we were talking about how if the Raiders don't pick him at 7, watch for him falling deep into the draft. We said the only other team in the first round that could select Will Levis would be the Minnesota Vikings. They didn't go in that route. That means Will Levis is not going to be a first round pick, so I just wanted to shout that out.
I love what the Eagles are doing, taking that Georgia defense. That Georgia defense is loaded with NFL talent, and they're taking advantage of that. I love the Jalen Carter pick. I think he could have gone even number 2. Now, was he my number 2 player? No, that would be Will Anderson or CJ Stroud. I have them 1 and 2, but he definitely could have gone in the top 5. They got him where they did, I think, at 9, and then they were able to get Nolan Smith. That's what I think one of the low-key steals in the first round are. He ran a 4.39 40-yard dash, had a 41.5-inch vertical. You don't see that at a guy his size. I mean, he's just a freak. So Eagles good. As far as Lions go, am I complaining about Jahmyr Gibbs as a player? No, I think he's an Alvin Kamara in his prime type of running back. I love Jahmyr Gibbs, everything he can do. But is he pick 12 to a team who's got running backs there? No, he's not, especially when you have DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery, like you said, they signed. Are those great options right now? No, but I feel like you shouldn't be ready to give up on DeAndre Swift yet. Also, Jack Campbell, I have a mid-second round grade on him. Not a big fan of that. Also, not a big fan of the Packers first pick. For Lucas Van Ness, I'll throw that out there. They're going to have to play him outside a little more on the defensive line. He played more inside at Iowa. I don't think he can do that. I don't think he'll be a great pick there personally. But as far as Will Levis goes, I was not a fan of him in our preview when we talked about him going possibly in the top 5, top 10. Now that he's fallen out of the first round, I don't think a team would be dumb to take him. I think it'd be a good pick value-wise. It's not that I don't think Will Levis would be a good player. I just didn't think he'd be a great player value-wise for that pick. But I mean, at this point, if the Vikings, like you called in that video, would take a shot on him, I'd be all for that.
And how about the Rams too? If you think about the Rams, they could possibly take a shot at Will Levis. And if you're the Rams, you're probably thinking, wow, we're going to have a chance to pick our future franchise quarterback in the second round. We just got to wait for him to fall down a few more spots, possibly even trade up with Pittsburgh for pick 32 just to secure Will Levis. I compared Will Levis to Matthew Stafford. Well, if he gets to play behind Matthew Stafford for a year and get to play in the Sean McVay offense, that's going to be the perfect fit for Will Levis. So I'm just thinking about that matter from that perspective. How about Anthony Richardson to the Colts? So that is a match made in heaven. I'm thinking about Anthony Richardson. I'm thinking about Jonathan Taylor. I'm thinking about that offensive line. I'm thinking about that head coach that they hired, Shane Steichen, is a perfect fit for Anthony Richardson to succeed in. And Anthony Richardson doesn't even necessarily have to play right away. They could start Gardner Minshew. Minshew could keep them competitive first half of the year until he can give way to Anthony Richardson, and Anthony Richardson could eventually pop off. I think Anthony Richardson was getting slept on throughout this draft, and when you talk about this draft class in a few years down the line, we might be talking about Anthony Richardson as the best quarterback in this draft class, if not the second best, just behind CJ Stroud. So that's also what I'm thinking about as well.
Yeah, I mean, let's have a quick conversation about the quarterbacks. As far as Will Levis goes, in college, his offensive coordinator in his best year, not this past season, but the season before, I had Liam Cohen. Liam Cohen was a part of that Sean McVay coaching tree. He was the quarterback's coach, left for Kentucky, the offensive coordinator. Now he's back there, but when Will Levis had this kind of poor past season, Liam Cohen wasn't there. If he went back into that Sean McVay system, he already knows the system really well because of Liam Cohen, and he just would have to pick up a few more things. Match made in heaven right there. I would love that for him. Future franchise quarterback, potentially, like you said. As far as Hendon Hooker goes, we haven't mentioned him. Someone said he could have gone in the first round. A lot of experts were saying that. He didn't. I think he'll be a steal as well. I have actually a higher grade on him than Will Levis personally. And then as far as Anthony Richardson goes, big fan of Anthony Richardson. I actually think he'll start week 1 for them over Gardner Minshew. I'm going to call that now. Great match making, just like you said, match made in heaven. And then let's mention the first 2 quarterbacks taken, the first 2 picks, which we haven't even really touched on. Bryce Young going to the Panthers, I think that's a solid pick. I think he'll be a solid player for them. I don't think he's the best quarterback in this draft. I think he's my 3rd best behind CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson, but that's no, sly on Bryce Young. I think he's got a lot of traits to him that you like. He's just not my number 1. And then CJ Stroud, that's my number 1 guy, and he got to go number 2 overall to the Texans. I think it's a great fit there. I just think they need to pick a wide receiver with their next pick.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking about these quarterbacks as well, and I'm thinking about how the Carolina Panthers, they were in love with CJ Stroud, and they even consider Anthony Richardson. And then for them to switch up on Bryce Young the last second, this tells me that this was an ownership force pick. The owner wanted Bryce Young. It's not even a secret. And David Tepper's already saying we want Super Bowls after picking Bryce Young. So I'm already kind of a little bit concerned about that. Do I think Bryce Young could be successful? Yeah, I think there's a chance he could be successful. But I don't like the fact that this coaching staff wasn't necessarily all in on Bryce Young. Now it's kind of feeling like they were forced to handpick Bryce Young as their quarterback. Sometimes those things just don't work out really well. So that could backfire on my Panthers. Hopefully I am wrong about that, but I love the pick that the Houston Texans made because the Houston Texans are finally finding ways to become a competitive franchise again, which is something that they haven't done in the last few years whatsoever. So that's just some of my thoughts with these quarterbacks. As for Hendon Hooker, he might slip into a 3rd or 4th round pick possibly. I think he could be a good player if he lands in the right situation, but there's just not too many teams that need a quarterback right now, quite frankly. Now that we've gotten kind of that wrapped up, let's talk about biggest winner and biggest losers. And we're going to talk about from a team perspective. So who's your biggest winner? Who's your biggest loser?
Yeah, we've mentioned all 3 teams I really like as winners. I will pick one at the end, but I'll mention my 3 finalists. Got to go with the Texans, getting the 2 top guys in my personal board at picks 2 and 3, making a great trade up. Usually I'm not a fan of trading up and giving up a lot of assets. Really, I don't think they gave up too much, and I think they got great players. I mentioned the Seahawks getting Devon Witherspoon and Jackson Smith-Njigba, 2 great picks for them. And you got to go with the Eagles as well, getting those 2 Georgia defensive linemen. I think that'll be great for them. overall, if I had to pick a main winner, I got to pick the Houston Texans. You see what they're doing, getting CJ Stroud as their guy for the future. I think that guy can make any throw on the field. I think he's got great arm strength, but also great deep touch. There's a difference between arm strength and touch deep down the field, and he's got both. I mean, if you look the kind of stuff he's able to throw in some windows, I mean, I haven't seen any quarterback throw like that sometimes. And I mean, it's just ball perfect placement. And sometimes you see Bryce Young kind of sling it. That's why I have CJ Stroud over him, because sometimes Bryce Young slings it without kind of knowing where it's going. CJ Stroud always knows where his balls are going. And then getting Will Anderson, my number one defensive player in the draft. I think he's at that Chase Young prospect level. Now, Chase Young didn't get his 5th-year option picked up, which we saw recently. But I mean, he had a great rookie year, and then he's had injuries. As far as prospects go, I put them on the same level, and Chase Young has personally been the best defensive player I've ever evaluated.
Well, for me, I'm going to go for biggest winner. I think I got to go ahead and go with the Houston Texans in this regard. And I do like some of your other picks, but I'm going to go with the Texans because of the fact that the Texans were not expected to do much on draft night. There was talks that they were even going passable, picking a quarterback point blank. So for them to get the best quarterback in this draft class and to be able to get the best defensive player in this draft class, that's a job well done by the Houston Texans. And they were still able to retain one of their first round picks for next year. So it's not like they're going to be completely empty with their cupboard of picks in 2024. So they're getting off to a good start under D'Amico Ryans. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the Houston Texans. What are you going to say though for biggest loser?
Yeah, we've mentioned them. I will go a different route since we have mentioned them, but Detroit Lions would be my number one. Going with Jahmyr Gibbs, not a position of need, not a positional value there either. And then getting Jack Campbell, who I've said I have a mid-second round on. I just don't like either of those picks very well. But if we're going somewhere other than the Lions, I think you kind of have to go with the Dallas Cowboys, who actually are my team. But them getting Mozzie Smith out of Michigan, you're getting a good run stopper there, and they do have pass rushers. But I don't think he's a end of the first round talent. I have another mid-second round grade on this guy as well. I think he is kind of slow off the ball. He's kind of like the opposite player of Micah Parsons is. And is that kind of what you might look for? Maybe you want to get some versatility in that defense, but I don't think Mozzie Smith was the right player. Now, for only one pick, hard to be the loser of the draft so far, but I think they are the second loser of this draft so far.
Well, I'm going to go in a similar route as you, but just a little different. For the biggest loser, I don't even think it really comes close. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Detroit Lions, the biggest losers of this draft, because they had 2 draft picks that were in the first round prior to draft night, and they did not use any of those first round picks really well. And they really got destroyed in a trade package that they attempted to do with the Arizona Cardinals. Now, that's not saying that the Cardinals picked necessarily the right player, in my opinion, with the 6th overall pick. But that's another discussion for another day. When you talk about the Detroit Lions, man, there's a reason why they stay bad for long periods of time, and this is why, because they don't know how to draft the right way. And the Detroit Lions, for them to pick a running back that might not even be a full-time starter at the running back position with the 12th overall pick, that's just bad value. And then to pick a linebacker with the 18th overall pick, a project linebacker, mind you, that's not also great value as well. And the Lions focused on 2 positions where there is less and less value within the NFL, which is middle linebacker and running back. Those 2 positions have the least amount of value in today's NFL, and I don't think the Detroit Lions necessarily maximize their draft picks to their fullest potential whatsoever. But if I couldn't pick the Detroit Lions, I would go with the Green Bay Packers, because they need to go with a wide receiver or a tight end. They need to give Jordan Love some help. And for them to pick a project defensive end and Lucas, that's not necessarily a great pick for the Green Bay Packers. He's not going to amount to much. He's not even a first rounder in some people's eyes, maybe a bottom of the first rounder. Either way, though, he was not a top 13 pick. And you think about how the Packers swapped up 2 spots with the New York Jets, and for them to swap 2 spots up with the Jets just to pick this guy, they could have gotten this guy at 15. All right, so you just look at it from that perspective. But biggest winner for me, I'm going to go with the Houston Texans, and the biggest loser, I'm going to go with the Detroit Lions. You're going to go ahead and agree with me on that. All right, well, thanks for being on the show, Shawn. Appreciate you coming on here. All right, make sure you follow his Instagram at Shawn.Davisson. He's also got a Twitter account. It's called at Shawn Davisson too. Make sure you guys go ahead and follow both of those social media accounts. Again, thanks for being on the show, man.
Of course, yeah. Had a great time talking about the draft.
Oh yeah, definitely, man. All right, see ya, bro.
Yep, see you, man.
Yup, bye. That was Shawn Davisson that you guys just heard. Alright, so he gave his reasons for why he believes that the Houston Texans and the Detroit Lions are the biggest winners and the biggest losers of draft night. Meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and agree with Shawn's picks in there as well. I believe that the Houston Texans had a very strong draft night, while the Lions had a very underwhelming draft night. That's where I'm seeing with this. So that is why I have those three takeaways as my biggest takeaways, as I have the Houston Texans being the biggest winner, while I have the Detroit Lions being the biggest loser in the 2023 NFL Draft. Remember, go ahead and subscribe to Sports Guy Talking, like the video, and please comment down below. If you guys do that, I may shout you guys out in my Instagram story every Monday. That'll be for the @Dustin Tran Instagram account. Make sure to follow me on Instagram @Dustin Tran and @Sports Guy Talking. Also, go follow me on Twitter @Dustin Tran. Again, go ahead and do those things that I just told you guys to go do. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the content that was just produced. Peace out. I hope you enjoyed that video. Want more Sports Guy Talking, the home of great sports content? Make sure you click that subscribe button to get the latest from Sports Guy Talking. Go ahead and like the video. Comment down below. Check the description box on the video in order to follow my Instagram and Twitter. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from the YouTube channel, Sports Guy Talking.